An amazing festival is about to hit Ireland. It's called Unconquered Darkness, and it's going to showcase the types of underground bands we rarely get to see. 21 incredible individual underground bands from all across the world will be hitting the Voodoo Lounge in Dublin this Friday, Saturday and Sunday. This is a big deal. It's important. Look at the forums. People are flying in from all sorts of crazy places just to be at it. So I decided just to clear the decks of the podcast this time round to celebrate this, to talk about it and to get into it. You're listening to the Metal Insight podcast, produced and reported by Metal Ireland. It's episode 24. We're talking about Unconquered Darkness. Now, bands from the labels Invictus and Dark Descent are playing the festivals. We got some real crackers here. Lucifer, Possession, Ellersith, Crypts. The lineup is absolutely mouth-watering. So as I said, we're going to dispense with all the formalities, get right into that. We're going to talk to some great bands who are playing. Malakar from Slovakia, Antiversum from Switzerland, and finally Corpsest from Finland, who, by the way, as an extra special treat, have given us a totally new track purely for this podcast, which I'm really enthusiastic about. It's incredible. Their death metal is just incredible. So that's at the end of the podcast. You're going to want to stay tuned to listen to that. But we begin by talking to one of the guys behind this festival, Matt Calvert from Dark Descent, about how it came about and why you should be there.
On this magnitude, to go in and see all these guys in one spot and, you know, get to see them again or even meet them for the first time in a couple instances, you know, after working with them for quite a while, it's really cool. And I think it's going to be a really nice event. I hope Dublin turns out to be a worthwhile venture, and I'm sure it will. So I'm looking forward to getting out there and seeing how things go.
Definitely. I was just talking to Malaka earlier about the support that's coming from the likes of the Nuclear War Now forums and stuff like that, and so many people are going to be making the journey from the rest of continental Europe and all sorts of places to come to this, and that really bodes well.
Yeah, within Europe, there's probably a couple places that it would have been probably even more successful as far as the infrastructure and being a more central location. But I think this is what makes it really cool, is that it doesn't happen, for instance, something like this in Dublin or Ireland. So I think that's I think this is going to be a really cool event, and I really hope it lends itself to even more down the road. So I think if everything goes well, and but regardless, it's going to happen. That's the thing, it didn't matter if it's 10 people or if it's 1,000 people, it's happening. So and that I'm excited about. All the other stuff usually just falls into place after.
Yeah, you're making a dent in the universe, really, aren't you, when you do something like this?
Oh yeah, for sure. You're just talking about a few hundred people. You hope, but yeah, it's a lot of work for all that. But I think the people that go, are going to see something memorable.
Memorable is about the best word for a band that are sure to be one of the most interesting acts to catch at the festival. They're Malaka from Slovakia, a strange little band whose debut we reviewed recently on Metal Ireland. They're sort of like a weird, ghoulish, dark fairy tale. They sound like they came straight out of an era when the underground was primitive and really real, really close to the wire. And despite the simplicity of this debut album, there's something immensely charming about it. And the story of their debut is basically a story of the underground as well. A few demos up on a web forum, and before long they were being supported to make more and more, as Adam from the band explains.
I had very low ambitions with the whole thing, and then suddenly I just put it on a Nuclear War Now forum. So I thought maybe a couple of weirdos are going to like it, like maybe 10 people.
It turned out like about 200 weirdos really liked it.
Yeah, I didn't expect that at all, because from our country, do we even know some Slovak bands? We're not exactly the hotspot for underground metal.
It's funny because I was just reading, I've been following the Nuclear War Now forums on this for quite a while, and it seems like they have really sort of supported your band from an idea right to the real thing, and now we have an album, and not only that, but it's brilliant.
Yeah, I was really surprised. I thought like, okay, some Eastern European shit again. uh, anyway, and then I think someone sent that to Darragh. I think Andy from Autism was one of those people. And Darragh wrote me an email shortly after, and we just exchanged a couple of emails, and it was a deal quite soon because, it was basically the ideal label for us.
Yeah, I've always seen Invictus as a label that takes chances on small gems of bands that are not quite complete.
It was a risky thing for them to sign us in a way.
But look, it's paid off because I can't pronounce it properly. What is it? Stridensny D? How do you pronounce it?
Oh well, it's a Stridjedni.
Okay, well that wasn't too bad, but it's a great album because what a lot of people are saying, and what is really true, is that it really, really harks back to Merciful Fate, Venom, but in particular maybe Master's Hammer and Barathrum and stuff like that. It just has that feel, and it doesn't sound like a project. It sounds like a real band, which I guess is what it is now.
Yeah, it turned out to be a real band, like in the middle of the process, of the recording. And now we have 2 new members, including a full-time drummer, so we're a normal band now. We're kind of a mix of generations, but I'm the youngest one, and the guys are mostly in their 30s.
Well, that sort of explains maybe the old school, the reality of the old school sound.
I've been into metal like since an extremely early age compared to most of other people, because I have an older brother, and he brought all these tapes at home. With his old bands, and I was already into that at that age. For some reason, it just attracted me all the time, and I stayed with the music. So I kind of remember, the 90s.
But you've managed to get the feel, and the one thing that really comes across on the album is it's kind of the crazy, slightly unhinged, slightly, berserk, almost, it's almost like Norwegian folklore, with ghosts and goblins and ghouls and werewolves and drunkenness and all that stuff. But you've managed to really you've really managed to bring it to life on the album. Like in your vocals, you can really hear different characters, especially when you do falsetto every now and again.
It was an easy job, basically, because we just met up and get drunk, and I wanted to portray that sort of the grotesque figures from folklore, and our Slovakian folklore is full of such stuff, and it was like just we grown up with these things, since childhood. It's a part of our culture, so it was quite easy to get to tap into that sort of mood.
It feels like a sort of you used the word grotesque. That's exactly right. It's almost like a I don't know, like a sort of Transylvanian horror novel or something like that.
I'm trying to invoke that kind of feeling, like when someone for example from Ireland, you watch the old Hammer horror movies, and some of them are from Eastern Europe, and that kind of exotic feeling that like it's Europe, but it's from the wild parts.
It is the very wildest parts of Europe, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm glad if we can evoke that kind of feeling in people from West.
So have you gigged much, or I mean, because you've only just got the album out. Have you been playing many shows at all in your whole career?
Just one. Most of us played lots of gigs with other bands before, because we all come from different bands in the past. But we only had one show so far. It was a couple of weeks ago, actually, here in Bratislava. It was with Goldcraft. You might check them out. They're friends of ours. It's like old school black death metal, like late 80s, like Treblinka, early time. And they released an EP on Iron Bonehead lately.
Oh, very good, yeah. Okay.
And that was like, we're basically the only bands here that broke to this kind of international underground. So
yeah, because I was going to say, I sort of associate the Czech Republic and Slovakia more with sort of extreme death metal and like obscene extreme and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. I don't want to be an asshole, but a lot of people have bad taste here. I have to say that honestly. So, there's not so much people into this underground kind of stuff, sadly.
Is there a reason for that? Is it cultural or is it frowned upon? Or
I don't know. Maybe for example, in the West, the retro thing is really big at the moment. But in here, we're still like have maybe some complex from the communist past or something like. We want everything new and shiny, and when something's retro, it's like old and awkward for people. it's hard to explain.
No, I understand. I understand totally what you're saying, and that's a really, that's a really strange cultural feeling, isn't it? To almost despise or to want to throw away the stuff that reminds people of an older and less comfortable era.
Yeah, I think that's at the core of this problem.
Wow.
It's just my opinion. I don't know if it's true, but
no, that's extremely.
I've thought a lot about it, and that's probably the core of the problem.
In terms of, I mean, you mentioned that you've had one gig together as a proper band. I mean, I'd almost think that would give the gig coming up, the Unconquered Darkness. I think that almost gives it extra spice in a way.
Yeah, well, actually,
it'll certainly keep you on your toes, won't it?
Sorry?
It'll keep you on your toes.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, we all had some gigs in the past with other bands, but it's very unusual to have your almost first gig on an event like this. It's great, yeah. Of course, we're very much looking forward to it.
Well, you mentioned the Nuclear War Now forums earlier, and they very much have supported your band right from the start. But so many of those guys are going to be coming over for this, and it'll be such a treat for them to actually see you, and the Irish metalheads as well, to see you play in the flesh and just take in this mad, weird, strange underground metal music.
Yeah, we are really looking forward to that as well, because we don't have events like that in here almost at all, because of the problems which I mentioned. And when some underground bands tour through Europe, they usually go to Vienna and then they go back. They rarely come here because there's not enough of audience for that.
Well, we have that problem too, because we've got the sea in between us and the UK, and it means a lot of it's just
it's kind of isolation on the island. Yeah, I know what you mean.
But I guess that's going to make the whole experience maybe extra. But one of the things I'm trying to get at I think this is a really important festival because it's a real coming together of a lot of really obscure and brilliant underground bands that would never normally get to be in one place together, and that's what this festival's about. And for you guys to be part of that, especially when you're not usually part of stuff like that, it must make it really special to play.
Yeah, it's extremely special. Like, we're talking about it all the time, because we're looking forward to it. But we only have what do we have? In July we're playing at Germany. Yeah. And then maybe some, I don't know, Poland, Romania, but it's not settled so far.
It's funny because when I first heard the album, it actually, I know we've been talking about like Master's Hammer and stuff like that, but what it really reminded me of was Psy and an early Psy record called Ghastly Funeral Theatre. I don't know if you ever heard it. It was a little EP.
Yeah, I liked Psy, but I wasn't for sure influenced by them.
Oh no, I know. It's just the vibe. It's that early Venom kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Of the early stuff.
Actually, we're not even influenced by Master's Hammer in terms of music. Yeah. More like the attitude.
Exactly. I think it's just that crazy, mad.
Similar mentality, because we're part of one country just 20 years ago.
Yeah. It's funny. I think bands these days are just far too safe, far too clean. No bands are on edge. They're all just, on a conveyor belt for the most part. But bands like you guys who actually do your own thing are actually comparatively rare. I mean, your album is just so strange and fresh just because it's so damn different, so nuts.
It goes hand in hand with the lyrics and the whole concept and, the imagery. I like to create a kind of a special world that you enter when you play the album. I like when some bands do that.
Adam from Malakar Patan there, and you really should hear that album if you haven't yet. It's really different and strange and really reminds me of better times in the underground. But back to the festival, loads of bands are coming that the Irish audience would rarely, if ever, have the chance to see. And it's more impressive when you think that this is all being coordinated between Invictus, Darragh in Ireland, and Dark Descent, Matt, who is basically in Colorado, west side of America. So I asked Matt about the expense of all that, not just for him getting here and being here, but for the time involved when he's also trying to run his label.
I think it's important for me to get out from behind the desk and go other places and meet and talk to people. I mean, I realize that I get to go out and see all the bands and talk to all the guys in one shot, and that makes it really awesome too. And and I meet other people too, that'll come up and tell me how awesome they think the label is. And I mean, I think it's cool. So making yourself available to all that. I'm not just a guy sitting behind a computer. A lot of those guys, you run across them. They run labels, and you never see them at any shows, or you never met them, and that's their thing. They run a business and everything, but I run it a little differently. So I think it's important. It does cost money. It costs me money, to fly out. It's going to cost me money for everything else, but hopefully we can make some more.
The lineup is really it is an incredible lineup. I mean, I guess I've been talking to the bands and I've been saying, wow, what a lineup. It's only because in Ireland we never get anything like this. Until very recently, we had a festival called the Fires of Samhain, and that really brought it home to me anyway, just how awesome it was to have such a very well cultivated, I hate to use the word curated, but a very well put together lineup. With this lineup, we have awesome. I mean, Lucifer coming over, it's going to be absolutely incredible to see that.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Between us and making something like this works, it wasn't going to be a difficult choice. I mean, the most difficult choice for me to putting something like this together is, not inviting every band I could, you know what I mean? Having to choose and having to explain people, hey, this is what we're working towards, or this is what we got going on. It doesn't mean, that I don't want them. Of course, I would like to, every band that I actively work with, to come out for something like this, but it's just not possible. So, hopefully, this will be just one of many, and eventually, we can kind of work through that and get the rest. But I think this is a really solid lineup. I mean, we're bringing a couple bands that have never played in Ireland before. One is the first European show, and the other one's just the second European show after one earlier this year in Netherlands. So Adversarial and Morpheus Descends coming over, and I think it has a nice variety as well. Yes, definitely on the darker and heavier side of things, but we have some sounds to kind of mix it up a little bit. So I think it's going to be a good time.
It's interesting because no pressure there then for those bands, because not only are they playing their maybe first or second European shows, but the boss is there as well.
Oh, no pressure at all. See, because I've seen most of these guys already several times, so I know what they can do. I know exactly what their sound's going to be, and I know it's just going to kill. I mean, I have no doubts about that. And those guys know, I'll be there, and that's sure. But that's not. I'm not the imposing figurehead.
No, I'm only poking fun. I get
it.
Whenever you walk into, when you see this place, you're sitting there at sound check and you're sort of waiting for it to happen, and then the room gradually swells and the smoke happens and the atmosphere kind of gets going. I mean, what's it going to be like to be there over those 3 days for you? What are you going to think of this, do you think? Because it's not just a gig, it's a wee bit more than that.
It's always cool. There's always a sense of accomplishment and everything, and knowing that, a little under 7 years ago, I mean, this wasn't even anywhere on my radar, something like this, but to be a part of it and to throw, throw my money out there regardless of what happens, and bring something like this together, I think is a really cool thing, So of course there's going to be a sense of accomplishment with that, but I mean, I think the fact that it's going to go down and it's going to just totally kick ass, that's going to be the more proud moment.
I know this is probably like choosing between children or something like that, but who are you most looking forward to seeing on stage in Dublin within the lineup?
Oh man, I hadn't even thought of that, but I mean, I've been working with like the English guys for quite a bit, many years, and I haven't seen them and before live, and I haven't met them, but they've always trusted everything that I've said, and they just keep doing their thing. They don't get out that often, outside of Sweden at all. I don't think they played in the gig in quite a bit, so I'm really excited to kind of see them too. I hope this is just a stepping stone for more gigs for them, but but I'm excited to see them and their brand of doom, and see how see how it goes there. But honestly, I've seen Lucifer, I've seen Corpsest, I've seen Lantern, I've seen Morpheus Descend, I've seen Adversarial, I've seen all the bands other than Eller Sith and Anguish, and I'm Crips, Undergang. I haven't seen Craven Idol though, so I'm looking forward to seeing the bands I haven't seen before. But as far as those other guys, I know they're all going to bring it. Like I said, it's just going to be excitement to see them all.
So we turn now to another band that will be playing during the festival, who I think are one of the more eagerly anticipated acts. Antiversum from Switzerland, from Zurich. This is one of those bands that will really create some of the darkest atmospheres of the weekend for certain, something that will become apparent when you hear their explanations for their music here. Last year they put out their demo Total Vacuum on Invictus, and I thought that the production was a bit dense, a bit too forbidding, but there's no doubt that they have that crushing vortex of sound similar to the likes of Portal and bands like that. There'll be ones to watch at Unconquered Darkness for sure, and this is Dave from the band.
The resonance of this debut demo was much bigger than accepted, to be honest. I shall be honest here, we aren't that happy. That's why we call it demo and not EP, because we're not there where we want to be. So so it was really not expected that it would have that it came so good to the people.
What,
like it so good.
What weren't you happy with about it? Why? Because many bands now, I think it's great that you called it a demo, because so many bands just go straight into, putting out what they think is their amazing album, when really, it's only a halfway formed thing. But what weren't you happy with about it?
It's difficult to explain. We're just not there. We were not there where we want to be. So we recorded it. We played the song a long times, and Antiversum exists since 2010, and we took our time. There was also a lot of lineup change with the guitarists, with drummer, etc. And then finally we had our 4 songs. We recorded them. We listened to it and thought, okay, that's okay for a demo. No more.
It's a real swirl of sound, and I was just going back and listening to it again, and I the song that always stuck out for me was Vitus Angelus. It's the real kind of blasting, driving vortex of a track.
That's interesting, really interesting, because this is the one track we say, no, we don't like it, really. This was the last track we recorded, and also that track we think then we had to rehearse this track much better before recording. The only part I like on this track is the doom part. Mm-hmm. Also with the vocals and the slow parts. They're pretty quite good, but everything else
so
we played better, and yes, also vocals would be better on this song.
Whenever, do you guys, have you been gigging a lot in Switzerland, or are you a band that sort of stays away from the gig scene?
No, we didn't. How many gigs? You can count them on one hand. I think 3 gigs we had here in Switzerland till now. Yes, and we also stay away is the wrong question. We don't get that many, that many questions to play somewhere, and if we get one, we are very picky.
And what is it that you look for whenever you're choosing?
The lineup has to be good. We don't want to play with any kind of with every kind of band. We really check first the lineup. Do we like the bands itself? Which play? Would we go there to this concert? If yes, okay, we're gonna play.
And I guess that means then that something like Unconquered Darkness really is it's sort of the perfect match for you guys.
Not the perfect, but it's a really good match. I'm really sorry that Malthusian couldn't play because I like.
Yeah, that's annoying. Yeah.
And yes, but it's a quite good match. Yeah. And it's also it's great to play a bit in another country, a bit more far away.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned about you were slightly unhappy with some of the tracks, and you were more you didn't want to call it a proper release, you wanted to call it a demo, and as I said, I greatly admire that. But one of the things I thought when I was listening to it was that the production could be a little bit off-putting, even to people who are into that style of very dense underground, that mix of death and black, that kind of new mix of death and black metal. But the production is incredibly dense and very reverbed. Do you think you'd ever change that in the future, or is that the atmosphere that you want and that you like?
It is the atmosphere we want, and we like. Okay, maybe we put a bit too much of reverb on it, and it's a lot of reverb on it. But in the essence, it is the atmosphere we want. We already recorded another song which will get out on a split with several other Swiss bands, and it's already a different kind of production on the new song.
And what was it?
But it remains still murky and swampy.
Mm-hmm. I guess I was sort of hearing a lot of stuff like Portal in there.
Okay, me myself, I'm a big fan of Portal. Yeah. Why not?
I think that comes through, that sort of swirl, that vortex of sound.
Okay. Yeah, but still, I think it has a same atmosphere like Portal. We try to get a frightening atmosphere like Portal have, but musically still we want to separate us from Portal as well, even if there are a big influence.
What is it that you try and conjure, or what is it that you try and communicate on stage? I know you don't do many gigs, but when you do the gigs, and I know a lot of people listening to this will be getting ready to see you and to sort of get into your music that way, face to face with you, what is it that you try to communicate?
What we try to communicate is the pure void, the pure nothingness, the completely vastness of not of space, but of absolute nothing. If in space you still have stuff like a time-space continuum, but even if you take that away, complete absolute void.
It's interesting because I wonder what it is inside you that makes you feel able to do that nothingness. I mean, you must have to concentrate so hard to do that.
For me, no. I was always, I'm really interested in everything that has to do with astronomy, and it was, and I was always amazed by this vastness of space, and then I wanted to go a step further and say, okay, what if there is absolute nothing? And this we try to manifest in audio.
I suppose that's where that's where antiverse comes from, isn't it? Rather than the universe, you're sort of seeking to channel an antiverse.
Exactly, it's an antiverse. It's like if you change everything like you have it now. You have now in space. You have more or less 95% of nothing and 5% of matter. And if you would now change these numbers and you would have 95% of matter, it would create such a big gravity that it would take apart time-space itself. Like a black hole. A black hole is just a little peak in space-time. But if you would change everything and make it from a universe to an antiverse, and then you would have nothing at all left.
Dave from Antiversum there with his thoughts on his band's music, and I must say that music sounds pretty much as bleak as he does. You'll really want to check that out. Now, to celebrate Unconquered Darkness, we've got something really amazing coming up in this podcast. A totally new piece of music given to us by one of Dark Descent's bands who are playing Corpsest, a new track from Corpsest for us exclusively, and it's fucking pounding, so hang around to hear that piece of music. You'll get that there in a bit. But first, back to Matt from the label on this whole idea of why a record label is even important anymore anyway in this day and age. Certainly when I was a kid, and I was talking about this to the Corpsest guys, it was so important to me what label something was on, as it will be to a whole generation or two of metalers. The label was almost the stamp of quality, sometimes before the band. You'd walk into a shop, you'd never heard of this CD before, but if it was on a certain label, you knew it would probably be okay. You knew you could take a risk. I feel that way about Dark Descent, and to a certain extent I feel that way about Invictus as well, but you're very different in your choices of bands, but you always know you're going to get something that is at the very least interesting and quite provocative. This festival sees a coming together of both your labels and both your agendas. It seems to me a real great example of just what the underground's supposed to be about in many ways.
I think it is. There's no we don't have big sponsors, no energy drink is going to be plastered on any posters or anything like that. It's about two guys that started some record labels, and we're just trying to get these bands that we're working with more exposure, and also just to have a good time. I'm really, like I said, I just can't say it enough, but the fact that we were able to bring 21 bands over 3 days to a location that generally doesn't see a fest like this, just kind of speaks volumes to the fact that, how much maybe some of the music is reaching in different spots of the world, and it's a good thing, definitely. And as you spoke to the first part of your comment about the labels, and you having your own fan bases and everything, and I think that's a good thing, and especially people are going to see Dark Descent, they're going to see Invictus, and they're going to know what to expect out of what they're going to be given over the next 3 days, even if they're not too familiar with a lot of the bands. So that speaks to that. It speaks to like I said, that the music getting out to different parts of the world, and people looking forward to something like this. So that if we can draw people from all over to one central location, and we can have something like this often, I'm all for it. I think it's totally a great idea.
Is there an Invictus band that you're looking forward to see? Any particular Invictus bands that you want to see?
I do. Obviously, I want to see Zom. We did work together with that, so I'm interested to see them. And honestly, some of the newer bands I know that, like the Head of the Demons got that new track streaming, and he's got some of the brand new releases that are coming out. I haven't even heard them yet, so I've been kind of running around trying to get everything on my end.
I'm sure you have.
Straightened out before I go, so I haven't been able to listen to too much new music lately. So I've got to do that because I'm interested, in hearing some of those, but I'm not too well rehearsed in some of the newer stuff that's just coming out. And he's got a couple releases coming out on the 30th, so right at the show. So
that's what the airplane's for. Get to catch it.
Yeah. Well, I'm unless I have it on tape, I don't have anything on my I don't have any MP3s. So.
Of course you don't. Of course you don't.
I don't know. That just seems like a lot of work, connecting a cord and putting them on.
Yeah, good grief.
So no, I got a stack of tapes usually, and I'm one of those guys. So, but no, I'll hear them before I leave. Though I got a weekend here to do some things, so I definitely will have some time this weekend to catch up on some new music. So
no problem.
But I'm definitely looking forward to. I know Possession has done away with their previous vocalist, so they have a new vocalist, and I haven't seen them before. Obviously, they've got Anniversum, also like I said, Zom. I'm really looking forward to some of these guys. I was looking forward to seeing Malthusian, but unfortunately,
yeah, it's such a shame, isn't it? It's such a shame.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good fest for I know they probably play locally a little bit, but something like this might be a little different. You get a little wider audience. But yeah, they couldn't show, and of course Maveth had to cancel because they split up, unfortunately. But we added two worthy replacements in Undergang and Undergang and Craven Idol last minute.
Now, surely one of the main draws for this festival will be Dark Descent's Corpsest. Their last album was hugely well received, and it's easy to see why. They're incredibly tight, proficient, and an atmospheric death metal band who they're just skull-crushingly heavy. They're incredibly intense. So we're going to talk now to Matty from the band, and after that we're going to hear an exclusive new track from them, so I'm really excited about that. Now, just a bit of a warning for this interview. In keeping with an underground festival, you're about to hear some underground production values on my recording of this interview. I didn't record it too well, so it sounds a bit demo quality. I hope you'll understand. Just stick with it, because Matty's a dude and you're going to want to hear what he has to say. But yeah, the recording's not the best. Hands up. Anyway, here's Matty from Finland's Corpsest. In the past, people have made much of the similarity to you guys, and maybe a bit of emulation or incantation. Were they were they big influences for you, or is that just something people are throwing at you because they've nothing better to say?
Probably both. I mean, sure, we do love both of those bands, but I'd say most of our influences come from the early 90s Finnish bands. Those are, like, at least for me, and as the main composer of the band, those are the ones I draw more influence from. Sure, Immolation and Incantation, both great bands, love them, but probably not that huge influence in our music, I would say, personally.
I think maybe people get a lot of the vocal from Immolation. I think they hear that.
Sure, yeah, I can agree, yeah.
Tell me about, everybody knows about the kind of death metal scenes of Sweden. Maybe Finland less so. We can all think of like early Sentenced or early Amorphous, stuff like that. But
yeah,
what was it like back then? I mean, what was the scene, the death metal mood way back then? What is it that you want to get back to that was so good about that?
I don't know. I mean, Finnish bands usually they tend to be a lot more darker than, say, the Swedish bands. If you listen to the music for, let's say, you compare early Entomb to early Abhorrence, there's quite a huge difference there. The Finnish sound is more raw, not so, there really isn't no pop or hardcore influences in the Finnish sound that much. It's just way more grimy, and that's one of the reasons I love it so much, actually.
Do you think it reflects the sort of the darker culture that the Finns are known for generally?
For sure, yeah, absolutely.
One of the other things that strikes me about your stuff is it's kind of funny. It's a very, in one way, it's a very accessible death metal. I mean, it's dark, sure, but we all know what's going on. Great riffs, absolutely pounding blast beats, great fills. It's pretty easy to grab onto.
Sure.
But at the same time, there is something more in it. And I'm kind of curious, when I listen to it, I just hear this kind of swarm or a sort of, a sort of cyclone of kind of violence in it. But what is that other thing that's in it, in your opinion? Because it's more than just riffs and beats. What else is in there?
It's hard for me to describe, but it's more like some intangible feeling. I mean, usually when I write music, it comes out... It's hard for me to analyze myself, but it comes out more like well, darkness is a good way to somehow summarize it, but I really can't write some like happy riffs, and that's how it comes out naturally. And I also love the doomy stuff, which I do with my other bands. So I kind of incorporate that with death metal as well, darkness of funeral doom and such. And I don't know, it's just something that comes really naturally. I don't really think about it and analyze it that much. I just do what I hear in my head and start composing.
Yeah,
So,
it's weird because I mean you mentioned about the doom aspect. That's kind of what I was hinting at because
yeah.
You know, when I listen to your stuff, although it's played like 30 times faster, I get the same atmosphere as kind of unholy, stuff like
Oh,
that.
definitely. Yeah. I want to incorporate that kind of like a really oppressive and crushing feeling.
What is it that you feel when you're playing Sovereign live? Because if anything sums up this festival, it is a track like that, just absolute, here's what we're all about, heads down, total power. What goes through your mind when you're playing a track like Sovereign on stage?
Usually, that's actually, well, I wrote that song, but the lyrics are by our drummer, Jussi. It's really actually an kind of anti-religious song, so I usually get into the mindset of the lyrics, and you usually see me doing the backing vocals and just going through the lyrics in my head as we are playing the song. But the feeling, of course, again, it returns to the oppressiveness and the really crushing sense of weight on your shoulders, so to say. That's kind of like the mood I was after with that song.
Do you
really
think
oppressive.
Is it that the blast beats help you to sort of burst out of that weight and overcome it, or does the blast beat increase the weight on your shoulders? I mean, what is it about that weight?
It can work both ways. It can be a relief from the really slow, monotonous stuff, but also when you start going into that pummeling drive and you really do it monotonously and do it over and over and over again, it has sort of the same effect as well. It can be really hopeless, so to say.
Whenever you do try to bring the audience with you on that journey, would you rather see people transfixed, or would you rather see people going totally insane and windmilling and jumping about and stuff? Which would you prefer to see your music consumed?
Both work, actually. I mean, it's of course it gives us more energy if we can see that the audience is into it and showing that to us. But also, for me, music is usually really introspective, or how do you say it? I mean, I get into my own head mostly, and if it's just processing my own thoughts, so you don't really want to show any emotion outside of that, so I can really understand that mood as well. But of course, sure, when the audience is really into it and showing it, that really also gives energy to us, and that's pretty much what live shows are all about, exchanging the energy between the band and the audience.
Of course. I mean, is there ever a festival in Finland quite like Unconquered Darkness? Do you ever get a kind of really well put together lineup of really, pretty unbelievable, bands you never thought you'd get to see in one place? Do you ever get that?
Well, there was this old school Finnish Death Metal Maniacs Fest last year, which was absolutely phenomenal. Actually, Matt from Dark Descent was also there, and well, I've met the guy many times, but it was a pleasure hanging out with him again, and will be a pleasure doing that in 2 weeks' time. So, but yeah, when it comes to the lineup, that fest was absolutely insane. One of the best shows I've seen in years.
Yeah.
And some of the bands I thought I would never see live were playing there. Something like Depravity and let me think. Well, most of the other bands are doing live shows nowadays, like Pertinence and Lubricant and Rippikoulu. Yeah, that was one as well. Really insane. Never thought I would ever see those bands live again.
funny you mentioned that it was cool to hang out with Matt, and I guess you guys will meet up in Dublin, as will so many people, because it is really a Dark Descent and Invictus gig, as it were. How important is it to you to be on Dark Descent? Because I just remember, as a kid, the label that a band were on was of vital importance to me. I needed to know, and I knew I could buy a CD blind just because it was on Peaceville or something. So
yeah, exactly.
How important was it to you to get on? And you've been on Dark Descent, I think, from early
almost
days.
From the beginning, actually. When Dark Descent started out, they were not really known at all, and it was Matt who first contacted us. I don't think they had put out any. They maybe had like 2 releases out by that time. We were not actually even that much looking for a label. The EP we did, the Dagger and the Chalice one, that was supposed to be a demo, but Matt got it and really wanted to release it. So we negotiated for a couple of months, and we said, okay, let's do it. Why not? After that, of course, the label has grown a lot and has got some really, really great bands. And I love what Matt is doing with the label, really. And we've met Matt a couple of times. I met him first in Denmark. It was in 2013 in the Killtown Death Fest. And then I was in the United States in 2014. I met him there as well. And then last year I met him in Finland. So, and of course we keep contact regularly. So for me, that's a really important aspect of the label as well. So we know each other as people and we communicate, and it's just not something you do on paper or via internet, but there's an actual physical connection there.
It's important, isn't it? Because, it's sort of the sense of wider underground family gets reinforced at these things, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
You very kindly said on the email that maybe we might be able to get an exclusive first listen to some of your new demo tracks. I don't know if that's possible. That would be really brilliant. I mean, that would be fucking brilliant.
Yeah, what we've been doing actually lately is we've been basically in a composing mindset and mood. We've been demoing some new tracks, and so far they are sounding really promising. Not sure if these will be the official releases or just demos for the band, but yeah, why not share one with you guys?
Well, why not? Because I'm sure the readers would give their opinion. And I'm going to be really clear. I mean, we know this isn't the new official music or anything like that, but I mean, God, we all love bootlegs and we all love garage rehearsals of great stuff. We all know it's its own thing. It's not the official thing. It's just a demo. But yeah, I mean, we'd love to hear that. We'd really love that. Would you introduce the track for me?
Sure. This is one of our newer tracks called Impetus of the Dead. We've been playing it quite a few times live, so if people who saw us on our European tour last year, you might have heard this live, but this is the first demo recording of that song. So this will give you a picture of what the new Corpsest material will sound like.
So what about that? Huh? A new track from Corpsest, and I'm sure they'll be playing that at Unconquered Darkness this weekend. Look, that's it for this episode. It was a kind of different episode, but I thought it was important to mark this festival. Thanks to Matt from Dark Descent, he sponsored this episode. That's very, very kind of him. It allows us to do it, but it also allows us to tell you about why to get to this. So that's Friday, Saturday and Sunday. You can pay €10 in on Friday night at the Voodoo Lounge, €25 for Saturday, €25 for Sunday, or you can do it for €50 for the full weekend, and it is just not to be missed, so do get there. We'll be back soon with the Metal Ireland podcast. Keep on rocking. We'll have some stuff, good stuff coming up for you, and just get to Unconquered Darkness. It's as simple as that. Over and out from Metal Ireland. See you next time.